All right, welcome everybody. We got a interesting webinar. Red Hill, the big Navy blunder. This is Lance Luke and Martin Pea. I was so excited I forgot to turn my light on.
Again.
Let's see. I don't think I paid my electric bill. My light's not going.
How can you do your work over there?
Well, I got several lights, but
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure what this thing is. Like I'm talking in the dark. There we go. Let there be light. Anyway, hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. We're talking about this subject that's been top of mind, and it was, I guess, featured in the news so many times, and people were kind of sick of hearing about it. And then guess what? After that, the Lahaina fire came as the top news story. But let me go through some slides here. We're doing this as part of the National Building Expert, Ask the Building Expert series, webinar series. And the webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, which is a local Hawaii-based company that provides building inspections and construction management. And that's probably the only commercial for right now. Let's talk about Red Hill, the big Navy blunder. Well, you probably heard about the situation, and I just threw in the words the big Navy blunder because that's what happened. It's always like the case, and more so, that the people are not trusting of the government, and we've seen that big time uh, after the Lahaina fire. But it doesn't help when the government doesn't tell the truth or gives only partial information. And that's what happened on this Red Hill thing. But let me give you a brief history of Red Hill and the reason for it. So initially, um, the military needed tanks to store their fuel for their ships and their airplanes. And they decided that if it's above ground, it's exposed to the enemies to attack. And so the decision was made to go underground. And the name was the Red Hill Underground Fuel Storage Facility, and it was completed by the U.S. Navy in 1943. Now, that was before all of us were born, right? Martin, you're not that old, right? Anyway, okay, well, maybe borderline, I don't know, some of you, but um, thanks for watching this webinar. I know there's people here that's in Hawaii, in the parts of the US that was interested in the topic. There's also people from different parts of the world, and maybe even some people tuning in that's from the military, and that's fine. So the US Navy constructed this storage facility in 1943. That was before I was born. And the reason to go underground is in the event of an air attack, you still have your fuel there, right? So there was 21 underground fuel storage tanks. And like I mentioned before, the fuel was used by the ships and aircraft. And they were based at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. Okay, so there's two separate bases, Pearl Harbor and Hickam, and that's why they're called joint. And the site of Red Hill was 2.5 miles away from Pearl Harbor. And can you imagine like a fuel line 2.5 miles away? So like you're driving your car and it runs on gas, and your the gas station is 2.5 miles away from your house. And that's the whole idea, okay, and you know, during warfare or even peace times, you know, the military needs the fuel in order to have the ships go around the world or wherever, and the airplanes. So that's kind of like the idea. The problem is, at the time in the 40s, we never had these environmental concerns, environmental assessments, environmental impact statements, Sierra Club, and the watchdogs for the environment. We never had those kind of people involved like they are today. So if they were to build these underground storage sites today, I would say I don't think they would be able to, because there would be too much pressure from the environmental people, um, you know, to protect the environment. The problem at the time was the design and location where these storage tanks were wasn't in a very good location, because it was basically too close to our water. So the facility that was built was kind of located directly above the freshwater aquifer that supports water for Oahu. It was basically in the Halawa area. And so would you actually, I mean, was it a good idea to build underground storage tanks in a location where you have fresh water that supplies a lot of water to the Hawaii residents? Oh, that wasn't too smart, right? But then people would say, well, there's not going to be any chance of leaking because, you know, we have good tanks, and whatever the reasoning is. Okay, so then from that time, there've been various leaks. Okay, but let me speed up here. Let me see what the next slide is. Okay, so speaking of leaks, January 2014, we had one, 2015, 2019. The reason why people didn't know about it is because it was kind of not publicized, okay, until November 2021. And when it pertains to the military, a lot of things are confidential or top secret, and oh, well, the reason why we didn't tell the general public there was a leak is because we didn't want other people to know what happened, or even where the tanks are, and that kind of thing. Wow, do you think that the enemies of the U.S. don't even know the location of the tanks, right? They already had that information. So the suppressing of information and the denial of the military when there's actually a leak wasn't that good. And you'll see as time goes on. I mean, recently there was talk of communication that the military was concerned about the leaking tanks even before November 2021. Okay, so in January 2014, there was notice, and the EPA got involved, and there was a required monitoring, enhanced monitoring of the tanks that was required by EPA. In fact, the ruling from EPA was that you either mitigate by building kind of a tank around the existing tank, or you empty the facility. And that was EPA's guidelines in 2014. Now, at that time, did anything happen? Well, not much. And then in 2021, that was when the people got sick, right? So the military at first, they were in denial and say, no, yeah, that's probably not what happened, or we mitigated the problem, so there's no more hazardous water anymore, and it just got to be kind of ridiculous at the end, until, they finally conceded that, yeah, there was a problem. Now, how many people got sick? I'm not sure exactly, but the information that I got was about 2,000, um, more or less, and including, um, that count doesn't include pets. It's only humans. So there was a bunch of pets that got sick, dogs, cats, and when your pets are pretty smart. So if you're filling, the water bowl from tap and then put it down, and your dog doesn't want to drink it, that's a sign already. And then, the dog may drink it, and then the dog gets sick, take it to the vet. And then you have all these sick animals, and then you have a lot of sick humans too. And people couldn't figure out what was going on, and said, "Oh, the water doesn't smell that good." And said, "Oh, well, don't worry, because parts per million, even if it was contaminated, it's still safe to drink." And there was back and forth. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply, which is the water regulation industry office for Honolulu, got involved, and they did numerous tests, and they basically uh, became the spokes office for this whole event. Okay, and I'm happy that they took a proactive stance. And a lot of times the military doesn't listen to public agencies that are not federal, right? So state, city, and so that's what happened at first. But good thing the Board of Water Supply was there to help. Now, uh, I'll talk more about the sickness. And then people started getting sick, and it got to the point of, it's not only one family, it's hundreds of families, thousands of families, individuals that got sick, and it got so bad people had to actually move out of their homes and live in hotels because they couldn't drink the water. And um, if you're using the water to wash your car or water your lawn, that's different from drinking the water or taking a shower or brushing your teeth with the hazardous water. Okay, now, can you imagine you have a glass of water and it's clean? Let's say you have a empty glass, and you open up a bottled water, you pour it in a glass. Okay, that water is basically clean water. Now, put some fuel in that water and mix it around. That's basically what happened. And people were drinking that water, taking a shower with it, brushing their teeth with it, rinsing their mouth and all that. That's why all these people got sick, because there was that fuel contamination that was in the water. Now, the last time I checked, as far as lawsuits, there were 7,000 class members, 7,000 people or parties, separate parties, that were involved in a class action lawsuit. And just this month, in November 2023, there were 5 active military members that filed their own lawsuit. So I don't know how that goes, where you're in the military and you can sue, your boss or the company that you work, but it'll come out. But not only military families got sick, but civilian families also. So you got to combine military and civilian, and also people who may have served in the military but they're retired. I mean, there was a whole bunch of different kind of people that got sick. And, um, you know, the lawsuits are still going on. Okay, and people have extensive records of the water, of going to the doctor, their kids got sick, and they have volumes of information. And when it comes to litigation, court cases, all that is entered into evidence, and it doesn't look good. And but guess what? The the military has to defend themselves, and where they're getting the money from, right? Is it taxpayer money? So you may be paying twice. You may be paying some money out of your taxes because of the lawsuit, and then you're going to be paying money increase in uh, your water rates. The water rates are going up in Honolulu, and people say it's because of Red Hill, but more than likely it's not. I think the increase in the water rates probably 20% due to Red Hill, and the rest are just because of old infrastructure and things like that. If you hear stories about water mains breaking, they're not breaking because they're new. They're breaking because they're old and they should have been replaced long ago. Okay. The current status of the mitigation. Guess what? I think if the military weren't forced to do anything, they probably wouldn't have done anything. So the various lawsuits, the EPA complaints, the Board of Water pressure, the pressure from environmental groups, citizens of Hawaii and all that, basically force the military to drain all the fuel out of the tanks. And I'm pretty sure that all the fuel is out. It may not be 100% yet, but it's close to that. Okay, so they're forced to do that. Can they build something like this again? Probably not. It was old to begin with, and there were concerns from even before the leak, but there were denials. So it's basically a difficult situation. Okay, so also let's see what I can. The future as we know it. Okay, so guess what? Last week, okay, November 21st, the Board of Water Supply is seeking $1.2 billion from the federal government on Red Hill. 1.2 billion. That's a lot of money. People say, well, why? Well, for one, the Board of Water had to step in and basically shut down the Halama shaft, and they have to divert water elsewhere. Also, they have to employ enhanced water quality testing protocols, install more wells, and then also alternate supply wells. So there's a lot of work that the Board of Water Supply have to do because of this problem. So are they entitled to the 1.2 billion? And in my opinion, they are, because they didn't cause the problem. They're trying to help. And their whole goal is to provide fresh drinking water to Hawaii residents. That's their goal. And when something like this happens, they can't reach their goal in some respects, and it's not their fault, right? They're doing what they can. So we'll see what's going to happen. Now, if the military doesn't agree, right, the Board of Water Supply is ready to actually litigate the matter so they can get reimbursed. And then where does the funds come from, right? As you know, government depends on taxpayer money, right? So it's going to be taxpayer money, and it's going to be increases in costs. So we're all going to take a hit no matter what, right? Even if you don't live in Hawaii, you're still going to pay for this error, and that's just how it is, right? So if you need more information, you can go to the State Department of Health. This is Hawaii now. And then type in Red Hill water information or something. Now, I have to admit that the Florida Water Supply has a nice website dedicated to this Red Hill situation, and they have documented events that happen, and you can track it on their website. I'm pretty happy with their communication and the information that they put up. It's not like this is as needed. If we want to tell you, we'll give you the information. So and I know when you're dealing with military, there's certain things for security reasons that you can't, they can't provide you, right? So of course, for national security, right? But there's certain things that are not national security, and we want the answers. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how these things play out. There's two things, two major milestones in this whole situation. One is that all the tanks have to be drained, removed, cleared, so that the ground is not saturated with chemicals anymore, right? And the ground tested. And we got to make sure that there's no further leaching of hazards in our drinking water. That's number one, right? And the second thing is the concern for all the people that got injured, whether they got sick for a little while and they got well, or whether they got sick and they're still sick, or they're still suffering from long-term symptoms. That we'll see how that's going to play out. And the military's job is to protect their own. So you protect your own military families first. But to deny that there was any problem and your own military families got sick, that's like uncalled for. That should never have happened like that. Okay, so anyway, that's what's happening. And this is a very short presentation. There's probably going to be more questions. The conclusion from the building expert, I say, if you're in the military, you're a civilian, it doesn't matter. If there's a problem, you see something, say something, and don't necessarily believe what somebody is telling you, right? Get the facts. Do more investigation to see who's telling the truth or not. And a lot of times these agencies don't want to give correct information because they don't want to be the guilty party. But it doesn't make sense because eventually the truth is going to prevail. What you missed, we've given a whole bunch of webinars for the past several years on building and construction issues. And you're free to go to our website, watch the webinars on demand. They're about an hour or so. You don't have to watch the whole hour, just watch as much as you can. And it's free. What's coming up? We have a webinar next month on why hire a construction manager. What else do we have? Here's our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. We have free publications. We have, of course, the free webinars you can watch on demand. Select the ones you want to watch, and then, on your own free time. Right now, here's something. If you don't need to watch it, you can also listen to it, because you can play, like, let's say you're driving and you want to listen. You can just play the video and then listen to the audio, right? So you can do that too. you got questions, I got answers. I know it's a very short presentation, but I think this webinar was actually the topic was given to us by some of our supporters who said, "Hey, can you talk about this?" Although it doesn't really pertain to building and construction, but we're into building health and health and welfare of people. So regardless if it's actually building or construction, we're still like to talk about that. But when you think about it, what is in the storage tanks, the fuel, right? What is a storage tank? Isn't it a building? Well, it is considered a building. You have to construct, you have to do construction work to build the tank, right? So it's kind of related, but even if it's not directly related, that's fine. So, the main talking points today is there were errors made, poor maintenance, they were, not truthful, and then people got sick. And when people get sick, the health is the most important thing. So it's not money, it's health, but we'll see how this thing plays out. So I'm going to open it up to questions and answers, and then hopefully people do have some comments or questions. So Martin, got anything from anybody?
I have some questions for sure. Always get questions from me. But yeah, it's I've been checking our viewers, and everybody must be out doing their holiday shopping because it's a little bit slow today, but no problem. I'm sure a lot of them will pick up our webinar in the replay. So let me hit you with the first question here is what actions have been taken to mitigate the leaking tanks at Red Hill, specifically and recently? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, they have to drain the tanks, and I think all the draining of the fuel is completed already. After that, there's a series of inspections and testing and monitoring and all that. So it's the main part of the problem is gone right now because there's no fuel in the tanks that can leak into the water. But I would like the soil tested and basically a guarantee that this thing is not going to happen again. And I mean, everybody's entitled to be safe, right? Regardless of whether we live in that area or not, we're still concerned. And you have, the military that has the power and the money to get things done, and that's what's going to happen. Plus that there's a lot of eyes watching, a lot of environmental groups that are paying attention and have been involved in this thing from the beginning. So which is a good thing because people are active and there are watchdogs for health and safety.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Lance. And I'll skip down to another question connected more to this is what measures are being taken to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future?
Well, there's no, because these tanks were built in the 40s, over time the laws changed, especially the environmental protection laws. So there's no way that the military or anybody is going to be able to just go there and build wherever they want, right? There's going to be restrictions. So if anybody's going to build underground storage tanks, they cannot build where in the location of the aquifer or where fresh water is that people are going to drink. So that's like one thing. The other thing is that the maintenance, repair and maintenance, that has to be the number one concern. You can't have fuel leaking in the ground, right? That's bad already. And then the other thing is leaking in the ground and then leaching into the water system. So there's going to be more protocols in place to help, protect the environment and protect people. So right now, if anybody wants to, any developer wants to build anything, they have to be concerned about the environment, right? And that's why there's in the law there's environmental assessment, there's an environmental impact statement, and so a lot of times developers have to, provide the information, and an environmental impact statement on a piece of property may cost several $100,000. So it's not cheap to develop a piece of property anymore. So the more regulations, the more regulations you have, the more expensive it's going to be to develop a piece of property, right? It's sort of like someone building their house. They can't just go there and start building. They have to meet the provisions of the building code. So, all that's going to come into play.
Very good, thank you. And like you said, this is really a health and safety topic, yeah, more than anything else. So a couple of questions here on the health situation is what health conditions have resulted from this contamination at Red Hill that you're aware of?
Well, I talked to several attorneys, right, and then several people that actually got affected, and it was headaches, dizziness, nausea, and it depends on like the frequency. Some people smelled the water and then they just didn't drink it. They went to the store and bought bottled water, and then other people they believed that nothing was wrong, and they continued drinking it and washing their dishes and all that with it. So it became an issue, and as you know, with each person, their health is different. Adults can probably stand it a little longer than if you're a child, right? So I think the health effects for children are worse than they are for adults. But can you imagine an adult that already has a compromised immune system? They have something wrong already with them, or something that's maybe not only one thing. They may have multiple health issues, and now they're drinking the water, and it could compound the problem they had. So initially, we had these problems. It's sort of similar to when there's toxic mold in somebody's house and they're not aware of it. They have headaches, dizziness, skin irritation or something. I mean, everybody's different. It's just like one human is different from the other human. Somebody could, like, I could eat a bag of peanuts, right, and enjoy myself. And someone else, they can't even eat one peanut because then they go into this severe allergic reaction. So everybody's different. So somebody who already had allergies before, now this problem is exacerbated their existing health condition. And I'm no medical expert, but I've been around in what I do regarding hazardous building materials like asbestos and mold and lead paint and so forth, to be able to understand these different hazardous components that affect the human body, right? So yeah, basically that's what it is, but it's more of a temporary condition. Like, you don't drink that water anymore, and then your symptoms may go away, right? For a totally healthy person, right? Now, what happens if the person is either a child, a baby, or they're older person that already has pre-existing health conditions. Or is it going to go away once they stop drinking the water, or did they drink enough of the water and enough of this fuel contamination got in their system, and now they're going to have serious side effects for who knows how long, a year, 2 years, maybe forever. And I have friends. I have a friend that was one of the first ones that got COVID, and he's still not well. Although he doesn't have COVID anymore, he's still suffering from the effects of COVID. And it's like I guess the term is like long COVID or something like that, where he tells me he's not functioning 100% like he did before he got COVID, and he has brain fogs and stuff. And sometimes I'll be talking to him, and like and he's talking to me, and then he stops. And what happened was he lost his train of thought, and that never happened before, he's telling me. And so I'm thinking, but he's telling me he's glad he's still alive, but he's not the same person anymore. And the reason why he's saying that is because he knows that, you know, hundreds or thousands of people have died because of COVID. But he goes to numerous doctors, specialists, and all that, and they can't give him any answer. He's like, well, am I going to get better? Am I going to get well? And he's going, we don't know. We can't guarantee you, but just keep doing what you're doing. Take your vitamins and whatever you're taking, and then come back in 6 months and we'll check you out again. So, and this is something that was not known at the time. What happened was he was on that Princess cruise ship going to Japan, and then practically everybody on the ship had COVID. The ship couldn't dock because they were basically banned. They were out in the water for so long. And then when they finally got the Ministry of Japan to let him dock, then everybody ended up in the hospital. He was in the hospital for like 3 months in Japan. He was supposed to only be gone for 2 weeks, and he was gone for 3 months. So then when he came back, he's not the same, right? But that's COVID. But that's just an example of, if somebody gets sick from contaminated drinking water from fuel, and you know, you heard of jet fuel. How many of you have like been on an airplane where there was some problem, and you know, you had to fly into another airport to fuel again, add more fuel, and you're sitting on the tarmac and you're smelling the fuel? That's the same fuel that people were drinking in the water. So you can't always, you can tell, you can smell it, because it's very distinct. It's similar to like you're pumping gas in your car, and you know, the gas is vaporizing and then you're breathing it in the air. I mean, you can tell, you know, it's not, you don't want to be breathing that stuff, right, for too long. So anyway, it's sad that people have still lingering effects, and we don't know if it's ever going to go away or not. But well, what other questions we got?
Well, what you're asking is kind of the next question, and I kind of preface with, you'd mentioned that in your presentation that in 2014, I don't know if it was just an awareness of the problem or the leaking and into the water system and all, had been doing that, and I'm not sure even what's the details on how long, you know, the leak has been a problem. And that's really the crux of the next question here, is what are the potential long-term health effects of exposure to the contaminants of Red Hill. I mean, that kind of becomes an issue to me if you have long, it's been a problem there for people for so long, and then so that means it's a long-term problem that can create long-term health effects. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is a huge personal injury case, or cases. I mean, there's like, class action. If you don't know what class action lawsuit is, it's more than one person filing a lawsuit and other people that have the same damage or symptoms, in this case, health effects and all that, join that one person, and now you have 7,000 or whatever that number is, people that join the lawsuit. That's a class, okay, of more than one person. So everybody has their standing in court, and that's what a class action lawsuit is. Now, if you read the actual lawsuits, the court complaints of problems, of health effects that people have suffered, or well, you don't really need to do that, but it's similar to, I got information from the CDC, and the CDC is aware of this Red Hill issue, right? And let me read to you the health effects that came from the CDC, okay? And this is not coming from me. I'm not making this up. I printed out this information. So here we go. Understanding the health effects of Red Hill water contamination. Gasoline and diesel contaminated water can cause a host of serious health issues. According to a survey conducted by the Centers for Disease Control, which is CDC, the commonly reported illnesses and health problems included headache, fatigue, dizziness, itchy skin, rash, burning and skin irritation, diarrhea, nausea, anxiety. Okay, and most respondents noted the onset of their symptoms happened after the Red Hill fuel leak and persisted for at least 30 days. Okay, then a lawsuit filed by victims of Red Hill water contamination health conditions claims that the health effects of water contamination at Pearl Harbor are much dire. Cited health problems include gastrointestinal disorders, neurological disorders, endocrine disorders, hearing loss, renal failure and complications. Some of these things, you got to be a doctor or RN. Tumors, lung damage, liver damage, lesions, thyroid problems, and baby loss. What that is I guess inability to have a baby, something like that. Also, long-term exposure to fuel can cause significant damage to the body. According to the International Agency for Research on Cancer, a division of the World Health Organization, jet fuel is a group 3 carcinogen. It is known to cause cancer in animals, though there is insufficient evidence to prove that it causes cancer in humans. While the problem is that it seems like there's not enough studies to determine the relationship between the fuel and cancer. But I mean, I'm sure, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some information on that, if not out already. I don't read necessarily the medical journals and all that, although I've read a bunch, And by the way, I'm an avid reader and researcher. I read a bunch of medical uh, reports that had to do with lead paint, asbestos, and mold, but I haven't read too much about the jet fuel, but I'm sure it's out there. They're probably still doing more research now. But the bottom line is, I'm not saying that um, it's not going to cause problems. I think it can be proven. But what's going to happen if you got thousands of people filing complaints in court for uh, medical damages? If you have a child who's 3 years old and that child is impaired for life, how do you calculate the damages from a 3-year-old to, you know, when they're 80 years old or 90 years old? I mean, this is going to be crazy. I don't even want to think about I mean, I'm involved in uh, litigation cases and an expert witness on a lot of building and construction topics and some personal injury with respect to uh, mold and other health conditions. But this one is like kind of a new realm for me that I don't necessarily want to get into it, right? It's just too much. It's kind of like a sad story, but the people deserve to get compensated because this thing shouldn't have happened. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. Martin, you got any other comments?
I'm checking our social media. I don't see anything else, but you're right. This is a tough one, but when it comes to personal health and safety, it's something that's got to be looked at and addressed and corrected. So I agree with your professional assessment as a non-professional, but realizing that there's it's you're very familiar with hazardous materials and all the problems that they create, like you said, the mold. And I mean, if the jet fuel isn't considered a hazardous material when used and properly or applied and properly, I don't see how it can be any different. It's
Right. Well, to me, it's common sense, but
right.
in the court of law, a lot of times it's not common sense. You have to prove basically that it was or is a hazard, right? So that's the problem. But it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt. It's to the point of reasonable certainty that it was caused a health problem. So we'll see how it plays out. But anyway, if there's no further questions or comments, normally historically on our social media platforms, people don't watch it live necessarily. They're watching it after. And if you are the ones that are watching it after the live webinar is completed, still post your questions or comments, because we're on social media and we do read them, and we do we take the time to respond. If you took the time to actually watch the webinar or a portion of our webinar, and you took the time to at least like it, if you do, I know there's no don't like button, so if you don't like it, there's no button for you to press on Facebook. But if you took the time to comment, ask a question, or actually make a comment, and you want us to respond, we'll take the time to respond to you. It might not be right away, but we have various social media platforms that we gotta look at, like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and so forth. So even TikTok. But anyway, yeah, if you do that. Also, if you have any ideas for future topics, we'll be happy to read them and decide whether we think it's going to be beneficial or not. And thank you for tuning in on our Zoom platform, and also watching us on Facebook and LinkedIn. So we encourage you to sign up for the next webinar, or watch previous webinars that we've given, and we'll see you again. Thank you for watching. Aloha.
Aloha.